the Super Bowl, of course, was very, very important in Indianapolis. And so what I did here was I collected data from Google in terms of the number of times Indianapolis was mentioned in a news article. So I just did a Google search, and this is something I did a while back. So it might not be something that we can do anymore, but thank you, the Google. But what this is, this is this kind of the references of Indianapolis. And so what I did is I charted over about a year, from February 11th to February 2012. And what you can see is essentially the increases in articles all throughout the world, newspaper articles that mention Indianapolis. They all kind of relate to either a sporting event or some type of other event. So for better or for worse, let's go ahead and look at these. So the first one was back in the NCAA Final Four when Butler played in Houston, but also Indianapolis hosted the Women's Final Four. And so we got a lot of publicity from both of those situations. Butler being an Indianapolis school, but then also Indianapolis hosting a major event. Then we can see the month-long May period of the Indianapolis 500, also increasing the number of references to Indianapolis in the news media. Then we have a couple negatives. The State Fair stage collapse. A very negative situation, an unexpected outcome of a particular mega event, the State Fair. So what happens? The stage collapse, and of course, people die. That gained a lot of national news coverage. Then a little bit later on in that year, we have the Dan Weldon accident. Dan Weldon was an IndyCar driver. IndyCar is a type of automobile racing series in which he died in the event. And then also the memorial was held in Indianapolis. And so that also related to an increase in the people in the number of articles mentioning Indianapolis. Well, these aren't always good things, but nonetheless, they're getting mentioned. They're getting attention. Finally, we can see the Super Bowl. Overwhelmingly, we see the biggest increase in which articles are writing about Indianapolis or referencing Indianapolis. And so when we think about impact of an event, it's going to be some positives and negatives. So sometimes a negative event can increase the publicity, but it might not always be a good thing if it's associated with death. So here we can just see an example of how sporting events do impact our city in particular, and definitely in terms of its newsworthiness across the world. Now let's go ahead and look at the Super Bowl. So here are various images I took as my hometown hosted the Super Bowl back in 2012. So just a quick 411 on Indianapolis. Throughout much of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, essentially the downtown hollowed out. So essentially when the downtown was redeveloping, and a lot of the efforts by the city to make downtown attractive for the Super Bowl benefited the fact from you had a lot of abandoned buildings, vacated buildings, a lot of places in which you could then reinvest. And maybe in New York City or Chicago, maybe a little bit more challenging to do that. So you had the opportunity to kind of redesign a downtown because it's essentially hollowed out. And that stuff I'll talk about later on when we talk about suburbanization. But anyway, so essentially all those hotels and businesses that were abandoned were essentially replaced with bars, more hotels, restaurants, but also sporting events, sporting stadia, convention centers. And so all of this then made it attractive to having a very, very nice downtown for visitors coming for a varied events. And so we've done a very good job of essentially turning our downtown into a place for tourists to comfortably stay here, eat here, and essentially do all of their business right here downtown. So this is kind of another thing to think about when we think about this particular impact of the Super Bowl. Yes, the impact was great for Indianapolis. There's no doubt that in general, the sum of it was positive. But the people on the east side, the near east side, the near north side, did they really benefit that much from all of these people spending all this money downtown? Probably not. And so we think about events, they're definitely going to be more localized as far as their impacts. It was even noticeable on Mass Ave. You would go on Mass Ave, just this area, just north of downtown, just a little bit away from where all the Super Bowl festivities were. It was kind of dead there. I mean, it was a little bit of pickup in business, but most of the attention was all there downtown, especially where we put the circle here, where we put the XLVI Roman numerals to commemorate the Super Bowl here, the Super Bowl number that was here. And so a lot of those people liked the fact, a lot of those tourists liked the fact they could then walk around very easily from one place to the next. And they could, even with the good, even if it's bad weather, they could just kind of walk from one skywalk to another. They didn't really have to, deal with any harsh weather conditions, even if there was bad weather from this event. When we think about the showcase effect, people don't realize Indianapolis downtown. It's kind of cool. It's kind of all right. It's not like Detroit where it's hollowing out. It's not Cleveland where it's completely empty. It's actually got kind of some good stuff going on. It's got this variety of museums. It's got the canal. It's got a very walkable downtown. It's got a very clean downtown. It's got a lot of these new apartments, new places to eat, yada, yada, yada. And so it's actually something in which it's no longer what we would call Nap Town. It was called Nap Town historically, not because it's Indianapolis, but also because it was just viewed as some sleepy, quiet Midwestern town. It actually has amenities. And so by bringing people in from all over the world, all over the country, especially very wealthy Super Bowl fans who are coming from very wealthy New England and New York to watch their particular teams, this was great. Come down and see our downtown, maybe come back again, maybe come back for another sporting event in the future because of our great downtown, all the amenities that we see here. So opportunities to redevelop. And so sporting events offer opportunities to redevelop an area and change its characteristics and change its identity. That can't be felt any more than Georgia Street. So Georgia Street was, back 10 years ago, back when all this was here, the state, basketball arena, in the end of this picture, then kind of the foreground, and on the left and the right-hand side, these are businesses and hotels that are always there. But essentially what this was is just a street that parking garages would dump cars out onto. Very, very, very quiet, dead street. Essentially what they did was they turned this street, this Georgia Street, into the main street, the main area, the main event attraction for all those various Super Bowl festivities during the week. So we think about the showcase effect. Yes, this is great. We get to showcase our city to the rest of the world. All those increasing news articles that are mentioning Indianapolis. But I'd argue what this also did was showcase the city to its own metropolitan residents. This might sound bizarre, but people weren't really, people that lived out in the burbs in Greenwood, Brownsburg, Carmel. They were people that, they kind of saw downtown still being sketchy. Oh, that's where shootings had occurred. I heard there was a robbery once there. And so a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the downtown. And so this is a way to showcase the rest of the city, the rest of the metropolitan area, especially those people out in the burbs. Hey, this is actually a pretty cool area. Come down here and get just wasted drunk. Come out here and, party. Come out here and listen to great bands and hang out in your own downtown Indianapolis. Never would we thought that would be a place, a destination for people just to go hang out and just chill. Never would have been the case 15, 20 years ago. And so essentially by creating a main street, by essentially creating a Bourbon Street like you would find in New Orleans, a place for people to congregate and hang out, these businesses then get the benefit from that. And so we see kind of a revitalization of this particular street, which was pretty much a dead, nothing street. So it's also an opportunity to promote a local culture. And so to promote and kind of develop community pride. And so in Indiana, we love cars going in circles for no reasons. So what they do is they essentially paint up 33 different Indy cars into all the different teams of the NFL. So each of these cars is a different team. And so because this is going to, these events bring people from all over the country or fans of all different teams. So what essentially happened was this became a great photo opportunity. So people taking pictures of not only our downtown, the XLVI and the letters and the circle and all of that. That's free publicity, but also for IndyCar, for a major local industry, major local company. So you had people all over the country now wanting to take pictures with their favorite team. People, a Bears fan I saw who was kicking the tires angrily at the Packers car. And all that was trying to, send them, I think he was doing a selfie of it at the same time. All of that, free publicity. And so using this to showcase what's important. Showcase one of our basic industries, auto racing, to the rest of the world. Maybe get some notoriety out of it. Our hotels have been very effective as far as making their guests happy, making all these amenities attractive, locating close to facilities, making sure customers are happy, but also maximizing opportunities. And so JW Marriott, do you realize how many times this building has been photographed just because of stuff it's had labeled or plastered on its side? So here in the Super Bowl, big, huge, side of this hotel had this trophy. This was people all over the country. I mean, this thing was being photographed, and so every single time those photographs, you see the J.W. Marriott, although not in this photo, being shown. More recently, for the NCAA Final Four, they had the whole entire bracket emblazoned on the side of the hotel in support of the NCAA Final Four that was hosted here in 2015. So once again, this is how local hotels, are benefiting, increasing exposure of their particular brand. Local companies are benefiting from this particular event. Now, one of the big fears, one of the kind of, I guess, the expected outcomes that didn't happen was that it was just going to be miserably cold here. And so think about Indianapolis any other year in January, late January, early February, it is just miserable. I mean, it's so cold. No one would want to hang out outside, especially in that Georgia Street. So we definitely benefited from great weather. So we didn't have the unexpected outcome that Dallas had the previous year when they had a huge snowstorm that essentially gridlocked the city. So what they did was they prepared, though, for it by creating a lot of these heat lamps and these little warm areas to warm people up. And so they very cleverly, what they did was they brought in the same thing you see on the NFL sidelines. These are benches that essentially are heaters that heat the players. Think cold Soldier Field in the middle of winter. And so essentially they use that also to heat the people. And it kind of plays on the whole NFL thing. And so very, very good as far as our city, as far as adding these extra touches, these extra elements to make events even more special to those that are visiting, which is even further magnified by the whole Hoosier hospitality thing. And so we've got volunteers. I mean, you go to the mini marathon, tons, thousands of volunteers. People there aren't getting paid. They're getting paid nothing to help people. And so throughout much of our city, what we had a lot of people after the Super Bowl, very complimentary of our people. And so although we're very neurotic, although we're negative, pessimistic people, we hate our, Indiana basketball sucks, Pacers suck, but boy, we are very helpful when it comes to helping out-of-towners find their way from one location to the next. So we had these volunteers that are all over the place. That are making sure all these visitors weren't lost, making sure our out-of-towners were comfortable. You go to other cities, you don't find that. You go to Chicago, you don't find people being helpful. You go to New York City, you don't find people trying to walk out of their way to help you because they see you looking at a map upside down. So it's one of the things that characteristics that we get to showcase. So we think about these events. Yeah, they're economic impacts. But I hope what I've done is I showcase a lot of the non-economic impacts, kind of the cultural, social pride, promoting the fact that we're nice people here, we've got a nice downtown, a place that you might want to visit in the future. All of these are non-economic impacts that very rarely get ever studied, ever talked about, ever discussed, much less in a human geography textbook.